His Divine Grace, Abhay Sharnarinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Shatarshta Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveta Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 9, Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy, text number 37. Tubhyam advichikit sayam Tubhyam advichikit sayam Atma me darshito bahihi Atma me darshito bahi Nalena salile moolam Nalena salile moolam Pushkarasya vichinvataha Pushkarasya vichinvataha Tubhyam vichikitsayam Atma me darshito bahi Nalena salile moolam Pushkarasya vichinvataha Tubhyam vichikitsayam Atma me darshito bahi Nalena salile moolam Pushkarasya vichinvata Atma me darshito bahi Nalena salile moolam Pushkarasya vichinvataha. Tubhyam, unto you, mat, me, vichikitsayam, on your trying to know, atma, self, me, of myself, darshitaha, exhibited, abahihi, from within, nalena, through the stem, salile, in the water, moolam, root, pushkarasya, of the lotus, the primeval source, vichinvata, contemplating. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Translation: when you were contemplating whether there was a source to the stem of the lotus of your birth, and you even entered into that stem, you could not trace out anything. But at that time, I manifested my form from within. Purport: the personality of Godhead can be experienced only by His causeless mercy, not by mental speculation or with the help of the material senses. Material senses cannot approach the transcendental understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can be appreciated only by submissive devotional service when He reveals Himself before the devotee. Only by love of Godhead can one know God, and not otherwise. The personality of Godhead cannot be seen with the material eyes, but he can be seen from within by spiritual eyes, opened by the ointment of love of Godhead. As long as one's spiritual eyes are closed, due to the dirty covering of matter, one cannot see the Lord. But when the dirt is removed by the process of devotional service, one can see the Lord without a doubt. Brahma's personal endeavor to see the root of the lotus pipe failed. But when the Lord was satisfied by his penance and devotion, he revealed himself from within with no external endeavor. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishayakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're seeing Lord Brahma's attempt to try to empirically understand Krishna, empirically understand the source of his existence, which is not able to be easily understood, as Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, by our material senses, by our intelligence, by our mind, through our mental speculation. So as you know, at the bottom of this ocean, or at the bottom of this universe, there's an ocean, Garbhodakashay Vishnu, he lies on that ocean, and from his navel comes a lotus flower with a gigantic stem which reaches straight to the top of the globe, this universe. And at the top there's a lotus flower, and that lotus flower represents the abode of Lord Brahma, Satyaloka. And it's compared in the Brahma Samhita, this lotus stem is compared to an umbilical cord. So the umbilical cord, it sustains the life, it gives nutrition to the baby, it's connected to the mother. So in the same way, all living entities, not just living entities, but the whole creation, even the material energy, is connected to its source, its energetic source, which is Garbhodakashay Vishnu, lying at the bottom of the Garbhodaka ocean. So when Brahma was sitting on top of that lotus flower, he tried to understand, he tried to find out how he came to be. So he walked to the edge of the lotus flower and he looked over the edge. And he couldn't see much, it was just darkness. But he saw the stem. Prabhupada is saying the lotus pipe. He's calling the stem the lotus pipe. So he decided to investigate, and that's what we're doing as well in this material world. We see the empirical philosophers. By the way, if you don't know what empirical means trying to understand something with your mind and your senses. Or traditionally speaking, the real empirical philosopher would say with your brain and your senses, completely on the physical platform. So Brahma, he starts to climb down the lotus pipe, and he keeps climbing down, and he doesn't know when this lotus stem is going to end. He gets scared. He gets nervous. So he climbs back up, sits on top again, And then he gets the instruction, as you know, he hears tapa. He hears the waves of the Garbhodaka ocean splashing against the mighty, gigantic body of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. So then he starts to meditate, and as the Leela continues, Goddess Saraswati comes and gives him the Gopal Gayatri mantra. Lord Brahma meditates on the Gopal Gayatri mantra for 100 celestial years, after which Lord Krishna personally comes. He plays his flute. We have the picture there where Lord Krishna is playing the flute. And he initiates Lord Brahma. And how does he initiate him? The flute, that sound vibration which is coming out of Krishna's flute, becomes the Kama Gayatri mantra, which is the last Gayatri mantra that we chant, the 7th Gayatri mantra that we chant. And then Brahma gets the vision of Vaikuntha, and he gets fully enlightened in spiritual knowledge. He recites the Brahma Samhita prayers, and he gets the Chatur Shloki, the 4 verses, the seed verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's in this way, Lord Brahma becomes fully capable, fully potent. Brahmaya Esha Jagatanda Vidhana Karta, he mentions in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he has the potency, it's coming directly from Krishna. And then he has the 10 Manasaputras, the 10 mental sons of Brahma, of which one of them is Narada Muni. So then he instructs Narada Muni in Srimad Bhagavatam, and then the disciplic succession continues. Narada Muni instructs to his disciple Vedavyas, like that it continues. So basically the principle behind this verse is that it's not possible to understand Krishna with our limited, Prabhupada is saying, as long as one's spiritual eyes are closed due to the dirty covering of matter. So this matter, not just this physical body, but our mind is like a dirty covering. So I was speaking to a friend of mine. He's a scientist. We were high school friends, but I happened to meet him on book distribution. So I was explaining to him what this mind is. So it's like, say, if you're looking through a telescope. So that telescope, the hardware of the telescope with the lens and the body of the telescope, that's like our physical body. The observer which is looking into the telescope, that's the soul. So the soul is the actual subjective person that's experiencing everything in this world. The soul is the person who is seated within this machine, this vehicle of the body. So what is the mind? Where does the mind fit in? Let's say between the eyepiece of the telescope and the eye of the observer, right? So between the telescope and the observer, the eye of the observer, you put a piece of cellophane. Everyone knows what cellophane is? Yeah? It's like a colored sort of plastic. So the light which is coming through the telescope it passes through this filter, this dirty filter of the cellophane, then it enters into the eye of the observer. Everyone's mind is conditioned differently according to the 3 modes of material nature. So this dirty filter of the mind enables each person to observe the world differently. That's what the mind is. It's a dirty filter influenced by 3 modes of material nature, material desires, time, place, circumstance. According to time, place, circumstance, we interpret different material phenomena in different ways using our mind. So Krishna is not understood by the tiny soul. Only if, Prabhupada is mentioning, only if Krishna agrees to reveal himself to us can we understand something small about Krishna. And just to let you know, it's also mentioned that Krishna is unlimited. Therefore, even Krishna doesn't have full knowledge of himself. Oftentimes it's mentioned that Krishna is fully cognizant. His glories are also increasing unlimitedly. By the time Krishna catches up to understanding about his unlimited glories expand even more. So then Krishna again understands about his unlimited glories, but then once he does that, they expand even more. So this is the cat and mouse situation. This is the dynamics, the mathematics of the spiritual world. So there's 3 ways at least that we can understand from the scriptures, from the Shastra, of how Krishna covers himself up. For all of us living entities presently here in the material world, we are covered up by Krishna's Mahamaya, right? His material energy, Mahamaya. And Mahamaya is that curtain that Krishna puts, which makes us think that this material world is disconnected with Krishna. It makes us think that this material world, this material energy, has no connection at all with Krishna. Therefore, we who are in this material world also have no connection with Krishna. We are independent enjoyers and controllers of this material world. This is the first filter. If someone becomes a jnani, rises beyond the material conception of life, comes to some preliminary understanding of spirituality, that is Brahman, not Bhagavan, but Brahman understanding. Krishna has another filter. The Brahman, what is it? It's mentioned that the Brahman is the bright, effulgent light which is coming from the body of Krishna, the body of Brahman. Now in the Ishopanishad, the devotee who is reciting these very beautiful verses from the Ishopanishad, he says, Hiranmayana patrena satyasya pihitam mukham pushan yatte pushana pavranu satya dharmaya drishtaye. So he prays to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that this dazzling effulgence which is covering you, the Brahman which is coming, it's covering my vision from me seeing your transcendental form. So for the jnanis, Krishna covers himself, because the jnanis are not covered up by, they understand the material energy is temporary and there's something higher, there's spiritual energy. But they cannot see the form of Krishna. They cannot see the form of Bhagavan because Krishna covers himself by his Brahman. Just like we see, again, we have the picture of Prakashananda Saraswati. Where is it? This one here. So you see the Mayavadi sannyasis, and Lord Chaitanya is seated there. And it's mentioned that they were attracted to Lord Chaitanya not so much by his personal form, but they were attracted to the Brahmajyoti effulgence, which is coming from, which Mahaprabhu was purposely emanating from his transcendental body. Because they're attracted to merging into Brahman. So they didn't sort of give and take so much about Mahaprabhu's personal beauty. They were more attracted, according to their mentality, more attracted to the spiritual effulgence coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is another type of covering, the Brahman effulgence. Once one becomes a devotee, a pure devotee of Krishna, and goes to the spiritual world, then there's another type of covering. Now, even though the devotee can see the personal form of Krishna, still the devotee cannot understand Krishna. That is called Yogamaya. This is the third covering. Even though the devotee is looking at the supreme absolute truth, the oldest of the old, the person who is never decayed, who has no beginning, no middle, no end, still the person sees such a personality as just a little boy, as just a little friend, as just a lover. Still they cannot understand Krishna. So this is the third. But we want to be covered up by this, because this covering enables us to reciprocate with Krishna very nicely. So let's talk a little bit about empiricism, because this purport is focused on that. So in the path of empiricism, trying to understand, so the scientific path, and sorry? Empiricism. Empirical? Yeah, so empirical, you say empiricism, the path of empiricism. So I define empiricism. Empiricism means trying to understand something with your material senses. So for example, modern day scientists, they're not trying to understand the world through Shastra, through scriptures. They're trying to understand the world through their senses, through their brain, through their mental capacity. So this is the path of empiricism. It has at least two flaws. The people who are following the path of empiricism, they also depend on an authority. They don't listen to the authority of Shastra. Just like there's 10 pramanas, right? Veda Vyas has given us 10 pramanas. 3 of them are usually cited. Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda. We know these? Shabda means the scriptures, hearing from authority. Anuman means inference, mentally speculating. And Pratyaksha means actually seeing something with your senses, understanding something by actually seeing something with your senses. Those who are following the path of empiricism, they don't accept Shastra. in principle, they don't accept authority, but still they do. I'll give you an example. A scientist, if he gets a scientific journal, and he looks through the journal and he looks at all these different experiments that scientists have performed at different parts of the world, he places his faith in that authority of the science journal, even though he has not personally seen and experienced the results of these experiments with his senses. His philosophy is, I'll only believe something if I see it with my senses. If I can perceive it, if I can understand it with my senses, with my intellect. But here we have a situation, he's opening up a scientific journal, and he's reading this, and he's believing in it. He's putting his faith, his trust in it. So even though they're following the path of empiricism, they still have authority. So it's just a matter of transposing your faith from something material to something spiritual. That's all we're doing. When we're covered with Mahamaya, we're putting our faith in the scientists of this world, the philosophers of this world. We're putting faith in our own mind, in our own senses, in our own intelligence. But when we come to Krishna consciousness, we just have to convert that faith, transpose that faith from material things to spiritual things. The second flaw that you can see is materialistic philosophers, they cannot, try to follow this, they cannot empirically verify the original cause of this universe, from which gives rise to all subsequent causes and effects that they're studying. Does that make sense? They cannot empirically verify the cause of this universe, how it came about. Was it a big bang? Was it something else? They can't go back in time to actually see with their senses how and why the universe was caused. So they cannot ascertain the original cause empirically of this universe, yet they're busy studying, empirically again, the subsequent causes and effects. So they don't understand the original cause, but they're busy studying the subsequent causes and effects. But in Bhakti Yoga, in Krishna consciousness, we understand the original cause. The original cause is Krishna. And he empowers Brahma. And we understand that this universe has a reason to exist, which is to give the conditioned souls an opportunity to fulfill their material desires, get frustrated over a period of time, bahunam janmanamante, after many, many births, and come to the realization that, hey, I should be surrendering to Krishna. Many times in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the purports, especially in the 11th canto, the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they mention that the whole purpose of this mature world is just to facilitate the conditioned soul's journey back home, back to Godhead. That's why it's created as dukkhalayam ashashvatam divyam. It's created to be a place of misery, so that the conditioned soul turns its face away from the mature world and goes back to Krishna. Right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say we have a teenager, right? Let's call him Gopal. I don't know. And let's say he's a really lazy person. He doesn't like to do anything. He doesn't like to go outside of his house or anything like that. He just stays at home all day playing computer games. Really lazy person. Then one day his mother tells him, "Oh, Gopal, please go, and at least for your health, take care of your health, go out for a walk." So finally, after many, many times of his mother telling him, Gopal finally decides to go out for a walk. So he steps outside of his house, and he's walking down the street, and then he sees that some person, like a lady's being mugged by a thief. And something within him tells him, oh, I should go and save this lady. So he goes and he punches the thief, and he saves the purse of this lady, and he gives it back to this lady. And there happens to be a newspaper reporter, and he sees this. Now, the newspaper reporter may conclude that Gopal is a very brave person. He's a very outgoing person. He has great chivalry. He has the desire to protect citizens. That's the empirical philosophers. They're not seeing the original cause. The original cause is that Gopal is actually a lazy person. His mother simply told him, go out for a walk. And as it happened, he ended up in this situation and he ended up becoming a great hero. But if we don't understand that, then we'll mistake Gopal's personality. We'll think he's a very outgoing personality. We'll think he's a very active person. But we have to see the whole thing in perspective. So in Bhakti Yoga and Krishna consciousness, we see the beginning, the original cause, and we see all subsequent causes and effects in relation to the original cause. That is known as the descending path of knowledge. The descending path of knowledge means we have knowledge coming directly from Krishna, the Supreme Absolute Truth, and we understand this whole material world in relation to that knowledge coming from Krishna. The ascending path of knowledge means you start off with nothing. You start off with ignorance, like Brahma. Brahma was trying to follow the ascending path of knowledge. There he is on this lotus stem, darkness around him. He's the only person sitting on the lotus. He doesn't know who he is, what he's doing there, what he's supposed to do, but he tries to investigate himself. And as we see, Lord Brahma fails. So Krishna mentions something else very nice in Srimad Bhagavatam. Again, I think it's from the 11th canto. How do we ascertain the reality of something? Krishna says to Uddhava that we can understand that something is real, that a material object is real, if the ingredients of which it is composed exist before its creation and continue to exist after its creation. I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a clay pot, right? I have a pot which is made from clay, and it's existing. Now, what is the clay pot made from? What is it made from? Clay. It's made from the element clay, the material clay. This clay element exists before the pot is created, and after the pot is destroyed and it's disintegrated, this clay element continues to exist. Does it make sense? Therefore, we can see that the pot has reality, because what it is made from, the clay, existed before the pot was made and continues to exist after the pot is made. Now let's go one step higher. Okay, now we understand that the clay pot is real because the element clay exists before the pot and after the pot is destroyed. Now let's talk about the clay itself. The clay is coming from the element earth. The element earth exists before clay is created, and after clay is destroyed, the element earth, which is the Pancha Mahabhuta, continues to exist. Therefore, clay has reality. The Pancha Mahabhuta, the 5 great elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, they're coming from the Mahatattva. The Mahatattva exists before the Pancha Mahabhuta are created, and the Mahatattva continues to exist after the Pancha Mahabhuta are destroyed. Therefore, the Pancha Mahabhuta have reality. Now, the Mahatattva is coming from Pradhan. We know about Pradhan. The Pradhan exists before the Mahatattva, and after the Mahatattva is absorbed back into the body of Mahavishnu, Pradhan continues to exist. Therefore, the Mahatattva has reality. The Pradhan is coming from who? Mahavishnu. Right? Does Mahavishnu exist before the Pradhan? Yes. Does Mahavishnu exist after the Pradhan? Yes. Therefore, the Pradhan has reality. What is the source of Mahavishnu? Lord Krishna. Krishna has existence before and after, again, the functions of Mahavishnu. Therefore, everything in this material world has reality because originally it's coming from Krishna, the Supreme Absolute Truth. And Krishna exists. He's Ajo Nitya Shashvato Yam Purano. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 20. Krishna is the original source of existence. Therefore, everything which is created from Krishna is real, but it may be temporarily manifested. So this whole material world, this whole material energy is real, but it's temporary. It's a temporary reality. Therefore, compared to the spiritual world, this material world can be seen as illusory. So let's talk about, I'll talk about this point, and then I'll conclude with a short story if we have time. So everyone knows Shankaracharya. And we all know why Shankaracharya came about. We all know why Buddha came about. Srila Prabhupada mentions in the Srimad Bhagavatam, I think it's the first canto, it's talking about the different avatars, the different incarnations for the age. I think 21, 22 incarnations, Srimad Bhagavatam's listing. So there, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purports that the reason why Lord Buddha came, the reason why Krishna came as Lord Buddha is because at that point in time, people were misusing the Vedic scriptures to justify the killing of animals. So then Lord Buddha came and he told them, don't follow the Vedas, reject the Vedas. He drove the Vedas outside of Bharatavarsha, outside of India. And he told everyone to follow the philosophy of ahimsa, non-violence, because they're killing animals. So then don't kill animals, be peaceful. Ahimsa. So these are the two things that Buddha did. He taught ahimsa and he told people to reject the Vedas. So they became Shunyavadis. Shunyavadi means nothing exists. Even this reality that we're experiencing right now is just fake. Even after we're liberated, we cease to exist. We don't exist. There's no spiritual world. There's no eternal soul. Everything is just a hallucination. This is Buddha's philosophy. So he taught the philosophy of zero. Then after we see, I think it's in the Puranas, I think Padma Puran, we see that Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva are having a conversation. And Lord Vishnu actually tells Lord Shiva, please appear in the form of a Brahmana and puzzle people and lead them off the path of Dharma. Therefore Lord Shiva comes as Shankaracharya. And Shankaracharya taught the philosophy of Mayavad. He taught the philosophy of impersonalism. So whereas Buddha taught the philosophy of zero, Shankaracharya taught the philosophy of one. So we go from zero now to one. Everything is one. But at least Shankaracharya did one good thing. He brought the authority of the Vedas back into India. Buddha rejected the Vedas. He took the Vedas outside of India. Shankaracharya, he brought everyone's attention back to the Vedas. But instead of saying that Krishna is supreme and the soul is separate from Krishna and they have an eternal relationship in bhakti, in love, Shankaracharya said, the soul is Krishna. So he equated the jiva and Krishna as one. This is impersonalism. Finally, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and introduced the philosophy of Anchitya Bheda Bheda Tattva, simultaneously oneness and difference. So he introduced duality, too. There is a difference between Krishna and the jiva. At the same time, they're the same qualitatively, but quantitatively, Krishna is different, he's much greater. Quantitatively, the jiva is tiny, it's infinitesimal. So we see a natural progression. We went from zero to one, and then when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, he introduced the philosophy of two. Now, one of my contacts that I'm preaching to, he's actually from England, and he's a doctor, and he had previously read different editions of the Bhagavad Gita by, I won't mention who, but he was influenced by Mayavad philosophy. And so I was telling him about, read the Bhagavad Gita as it is, which he is reading now. And finally he sent me an email recently. He said, I'm so relieved to understand that God is a separate person, and it makes it so easier for me to develop love and devotion for him now. Before I thought that I had to become Krishna. Now I can understand that I can never become Krishna. Krishna is a separate person, and therefore I can approach him as a servant and develop love for him in a relationship. So after much convincing him, sending emails back and forth, finally he's got the proper conception. But he asked me this question. Krishna is supposed to be everyone's well-wisher. So why did he bewilder and confuse people as Buddha? And why did he send Lord Shiva to confuse people as Shankaracharya? Isn't Lord Krishna supposed to give us the supreme absolute truth? Why did he bewilder people? The answer to this question can be found in Sri Ishopanishad. I'll just read the particular verse. There's 3 really nice verses that I like, and they all have to do with knowledge. So this is mantra 9 of the Sri Ishopanishad. Those who engage in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those who are engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. So here in the Ishopanishad, it's explaining that those who are ignorant, those who are in ignorance, they'll enter into the darkest region of ignorance, like hellish conditions. But Sri Ishopanishad is saying, worse than people who are ignorant are people who pose themselves to be in knowledge. That's much worse. And we see that the reason why Buddha came is because people were posing themselves to be authorities of the Vedas, but they are misusing and misrepresenting the Vedas to justify things like killing animals. So such people are much more dangerous than someone who has no faith in the Vedas. Therefore, by coming as Buddha and telling people to reject the Vedas, Krishna actually saved the people at that time. If he didn't come as Buddha and reject the Vedas, then you can just imagine the calamity that would have occurred. People would have continued to mentally speculate on the Vedas and continue to misrepresent them and confuse humanity. So Krishna sort of threw a spanner in the gears. The gears were moving improperly. Krishna said, just don't worry about this whole machine. He just threw a spanner. He said, reject the Vedas completely. The next verse, mantra 10 of the Ishopanishad, again it speaks about knowledge. It says, the wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge and a different result is obtained from the culture of nescience. So if you have knowledge, the result you get by applying the knowledge is different to the result you get by doing something without knowledge. So if the people at that time would have followed these so-called authorities of the Vedas, they would not have achieved love of Godhead. They would not have achieved pure love for Krishna. Therefore, Krishna had to come and gradually put them on the right track. And mantra 11, I'll just read it quickly. Only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. My Guru Maharaj mentioned that there's two different types of kirtan. One type of kirtan is directly glorifying Krishna, his name, form, qualities, and pastimes. Another type of kirtan is kirtan which deprecates the mature world. So when we say that the mature world is full of suffering, we shouldn't be here, this is also a type of kirtan. So Sri Ishopanishad is suggesting to us that we should learn about the glories of the spiritual world, and side by side we should learn about how bad the mature world is. And that way we can come to full knowledge and steadiness in Krishna consciousness very quickly. So I'll finish with this one story. Again, it's about Krishna's inconceivable nature, how we cannot understand the activities of Krishna. So this is, I think I told this story many, many years ago. But it's a story of, apparently, it's not an ISKCON devotee, but it's some devotee of Lord Vishnu. She was a woman. She was very devoutly a worshipper of Lord Vishnu. So one day she was at some event somewhere late at night. She was at some event. And she was by herself, and she had to go home after the event. So the area in which she was in was really bad area. It was notorious for criminals and gangsters and thugs and all these type of people. So the event finished late at night. So she had to go home by herself. She was a bit hesitant, but she decided to go. So she came down after the event. She started walking home. She was walking down a dark alleyway to get to her house. And as she's walking, she's constantly chanting the name of Lord Vishnu, because she's afraid that, someone might attack her. And she does see one man coming the opposite way, and he looks really suspicious. He looks like he's going to attack her or something like that. Anyway, she continues, under her breath, she continues chanting the holy name of Lord Vishnu, and she passes this person. So this person doesn't do anything. He just passes her way. And then she reaches home, and then she wakes up the next morning, and she comes to know that on that same road that she was walking, another woman was attacked. Just shortly after she passed this particular person. So they asked this person, this same person who passed her first, he was the one that attacked another woman who was walking down this narrow pathway, this dark alleyway. So when they asked this person who was convicted of attacking the other woman, when you're walking down this path, did you see other people who were walking there? Why did you attack this particular woman? So his answer was that I saw two people. As I was walking down this dark pathway, I saw two people. First I saw a woman, and then after shortly sometime I saw another woman. I attacked the second woman. Why? He said the first woman that I saw, she was not alone. She was surrounded by 4 other men. The second woman, she was alone. So you can see. I don't know, it's not coming from Shastra, it's coming from this devotee's first-hand account, but it shows that the first woman, who was a devotee of Lord Vishnu, she was actually walking down this path. She was alone, but she was chanting the name of Lord Vishnu. Now when this person, this criminal, saw this woman, he didn't attack her, because from his perspective, he saw that this woman was surrounded, flanked by 4 other men. So he just walked straight past her. And he happened to attack the second one. So we can't understand how Krishna will protect us. Like I was telling the other story about the soldier. That's a really nice story about how the soldier, he was caught behind enemy lines, and then the enemy military is approaching with guns in hand, and they're just about to hunt him down. They can see him running away, and then this soldier, he goes into a cave. And he's sitting in the cave and he's praying, I hope these enemy soldiers don't come in here and shoot me dead. And as soon as he goes into the cave, he says, oh, who's going to protect me now? And he sees a spider at the entrance of the cave. And the spider, it comes and it starts to build a spider web at the entrance of the cave. And he thinks to himself, how is a spider web going to protect me from the guns and the grenades of these enemy soldiers who are advancing and searching for me? How is a spider web going to search me? So from a distance, he sees the enemy soldiers coming, and they're looking in different places, behind trees, behind rocks, in different caves. And one of the enemy soldiers, he comes to the cave where this particular person is hiding, and there he is chanting the name of Krishna. But this enemy soldier, he's about to enter the cave with his gun to kill him, but he doesn't enter, because he has a thought that he wouldn't have gone to this cave, because if he did go into this cave, the spider web would have been broken. So he doesn't enter the cave. And he continues going. And this way, this soldier's life is saved. So we can see in this case, Krishna arranged for this little tiny insignificant spider to come and just build a spider web, and this saved this particular soldier's life. So just one point to add there. When Arjuna was fighting in the war, he was protected by Krishna's armor. So more stronger than that is chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra.
Because actually I was just thinking of this with the woman, because my mum had something done to her the other week, like someone stole off her, and she left it a while, but now she's got the police involved, so hopefully they'll track this person down on the CT who's in the supermarket,
Right.
But yeah, anyway, thanks.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Yes, Prabhu. Empirical. That's not what I mean. Indirectly, yes. What I said is that the philosophy of the empiricists is that they'll only believe in something if they can see it with their senses, if they can experiment and experience the results with their senses. But we can't go back in time and use our material senses to understand how this universe came about. We can only speculate.
But I don't think the scientists are arguing about that. So we can know that. But they can perceive, according to scientists, they can perceive that the process of becoming theory. And they have the other human law which states from a single point the universes are bursting away.
Yeah, that's called the cosmic background radiation.
And it's also then talk about light particles which can be perceived.
Mm.
There's light particles out there, and there's also the residual radioactive energy still perceived.
Okay.
Nobody can see it, and also then the relativity and as I mentioned the cosmological concept comes in place, which proves the Big Bang theory. So they are perceiving, and their perceiving is, their inference is based on what they perceive at the current time. So by that,
That's why I gave the story of that Gopal, right? That's why I gave the story of Gopal. They don't understand that Gopal is actually a lazy person and he was pushed out of his house by his mother. They saw the empirical observation.
then you agree the Big Bang theory is right. So Gopal's story is from the attack. Gopal was Shiva's boy, and that's been established. So similarly, from after the Big Bang, do you agree whatever happened did happen?
No, what is your point?
I'm asking you. You said
I'm trying to understand your point. Yeah, the scientists can't prove, so therefore, even within their empiricism, there's a degree of faith. Their whole philosophy is that they don't believe in an authority. They don't believe in faith and belief.
based on perception, not perception, by projection.
Yeah.
They are seeing this. For example, I give you an analogy. You put up, water in that, and he puts a pot of rice, and he goes away. And he forgets, and you come in, and you see there's a pot of rice cooking and ready. You're not going to say that pot of rice is false, or it's not rice, or it's not cooking, because it happened sometime before in the past.
Yeah. But that's not what I'm saying. That's okay. So they're saying they're looking at the subsequent causes and effects, as you're saying. They're looking at the cosmic background radiation, different cosmological things, which we haven't named what they are, but you're saying that. Fine, I agree. But what is their ultimate conclusion? Are they concluding that everything is coming from Krishna?
No, their conclusion is everything coming from this mass exploded.
Yeah, but they can't observe that empirically.
Well, they are observing the cause empirically.
They're observing the effects, the subsequent effects.
Yeah, then you go to the hospital with an injury, naturally the doctor can
So,
prove that there's an injury.
what you're saying is exactly the same thing I'm saying, but what I'm saying is that their philosophy is based on empiricism. They're observing the subsequent effects, and by observing these subsequent effects, they're concluding that it came about by Big Bang. But actually, Shastra says that it didn't come about by Big Bang, it came about through the creation of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. So they're not coming to a factual conclusion. First of all, their perception of the effective causes and effects, because they're understanding things through pratyaksha, it's limited, because our senses are limited. So even their, yeah, so, I mean, that's a given, we understand that. Our senses are limited. So because our senses are limited, whatever subsequent causes and effects we observe from them are defective. Whatever scientific instruments we make using our defective senses are also defective. Our intelligence is defective.
Unless you establish that concept, you can't disprove Big Bang theory, otherwise...
But do you know that, just for your information, that like we're saying that, okay, they believe in a Big Bang. Actually, there's a big controversy even within the scientific community, cosmology. Some say the universe is unlimitedly expanding. Some say there's an expansionary, contractionary model. Some say the universe is contracting. Some say there was a Big Bang. Some say that there wasn't a Big Bang. When we say Big Bang, we're using it really loosely. Really loosely. There's actually, it's not solidified. According to common people, but not according to actual scientists who are actually studying the issue. Like I was at CSIRO. I was working there for a year, and I spoke to one of my mentors because I was doing my thesis there in my penultimate year of university. So he told me that most people in this world, they're taught that humanity, life forms came about through the theory of evolution, right? Theory of natural selection, theory of evolution. But he said that the scientists who are actually philosophically analyzing this, they don't believe in these things. This is just the things which are commonly taught to the masses of people. I remember in year 10, I was taught that. In science in year 10, we had a subject called Dead or Alive, and I was taught all about natural selection and theory of evolution. But those who are actually contemplating on these issues, even though they're materialistic, even though they're empiricists, they may not necessarily believe in these things. So Big Bang may be something which may be taught to the masses of people, but it's not something that the scholars are actively suggesting is the creation of the reason for the creation of this universe. But in principle, did I answer your question, or do you have anything further to play? It's a very basic point that I'm making. The point I'm making is that empiricism means, the philosophy of pratyaksha means that you get knowledge by experiencing it with your senses. Indirectly. How? How do you perceive the Big Bang with your senses? But that's indirectly perceiving it. Okay, Big Bang happened at a certain point in time, right? So were the scientists there at a certain point in time when the Big Bang happened? Yeah, but they're not seeing the cause. You can't separate the cause from the effect. The cause and effect are connected. It is true. You cannot separate the cause. You can't just study the effect and neglect the cause.
Well, the cause is, their definition of cause is the Big Bang.
Fine, but I'm saying you can't empirically see that. Can you see the Big Bang? So you're saying that, okay, they're coming to a conclusion of the Big Bang by empirically seeing the effective effects. But did they empirically see the effective cause? No, you're separating the cause from the effect. In Shastra, we don't separate the cause from the effect. We understand this material world by understanding Krishna, who is the original cause. Sarva karana, karanam. But that's not empiricism, that's faith. Again, if you use logic, that's anuman praman. It's not pratyaksha. As soon as you introduce extrapolation, as soon as you introduce speculation, that's no longer pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means I believe in this microphone right now. I believe in it because I'm looking at it with my eyes, because I'm feeling it. If I'm outside of this room and I hear someone speaking on this microphone, I can extrapolate that the microphone exists, but it's not pratyaksha, it's anuman. So pratyaksha, in any time we gather knowledge, we have to understand the effect in terms of its cause. And Srimad Bhagavatam explains that whatever the effects are later on, they become subsequent causes for future effects. So the cause becomes an effect, the effect becomes a subsequent cause for another effect, and this cycle continues in this material world. But the Bhakti Yogi understands Sarva Karana Karam, the original cause for which all effects come from, is Krishna. Is that satisfying? Anything else?